America?
Hey, Del, how are you?
Good, really good. How you doing, Jeffrey?
Doing good. All right. Well, let's go through the numbers first.
Okay.
So cases worldwide, we have 3.2 million. In the U.S., a little over 1 million cases. Mortality worldwide, 228,000. That's a little over that. And in the U.S. Alone, it's 61,000 cases. Jumping over to the jobless claims now, this has become, unfortunately, a reoccurring situation on this show over the weeks because they do come out on Thursdays. We had 3.84 million as of last week. That was the claims.
Wow.
That's a 6-week total of 30 million jobless claims in the U.S. From the numbers, just from the numbers, this part of the damage appears to be slowing down. Now, the ripple effect is incalculable, but as far as those numbers, this is the second week in a row we've seen some slowing numbers. So, are we flattening the curve there or whatever? Sure, I hope so.
Yeah.
But how does this start to change? We began opening the country, and that's exactly what we're talking about with Texas, Georgia, and Idaho are all expected to let their stay-at-home orders expire tonight or today. So we're keeping an eye on those. And this is, this is an inflection point. States are expected to lift stay-at-home orders. I did a count before the show. In the first week of May, we should expect about 9 states to lift those orders or to severely modify them and to loosen them. Over the rest of May, so far, 11 states have announced that they're going to do that as well. Several states haven't made announcements yet. And as far as economies opening, currently there are 11 that are at some phase of openness right now. During the first week of May, there's going to be 12 more. Rest of May, 8 more. And again, a lot of states haven't released plans to open their economy yet. And some haven't released anything.
What's the difference when you say an economy opening and a lockdown being lifted? What is the difference between those two terms?
Yeah, so the stay-at-home orders, you have the orders, the shelter-in-place orders, the stay-at-home orders. That's the lockdown being lifted for the residents. Now, the other part of it affects the economies, the businesses. So, like in Georgia, for example, we have tattoo parlors, gyms opening. We reported that last week. So it's like a slow roll reopening for these
bars, things like that as we move.
Yeah, still social distancing in order, still masks, things like that. But we're seeing the beginnings of it pop through the surface here, and that's essential because, moving on to this next point I want to bring up is the supply chains. This is going to be an issue, moving forward. It seems like the supply chains in America and across the world are really being hammered here. And there's an article that says, quote, this is Breitbart, producers warn America is facing protein shortages. In that article, lots of great information. John Tyson, the chairman of Tyson Foods Incorporated, one of the largest meat producers in the U.S., says the supply chain is breaking. That was his quote. He put out full-page articles in the New York Times, the Washington Post, basically warning about this and saying that this was in his statement. He said, millions of animals, chickens, pigs, and cattle will be depopulated because of the closure of our processing facilities. So, a lot of people are trying to wrap their heads around this. Why is this happening? Why could this happen? When the supply chains slow down, these plants shutter just for even shortly or, indefinitely. You have cattle ranchers, you have egg producers, all the way down to, Idaho potato farmers. They're all expecting to offload all of this food, and there's no supply chain for it anymore. So they're stuck with
incredible videos and images of piles of dead animals and, crops being plowed under. I can't imagine what that feels like as a farmer when that's your way of life. It's something you're so focused on, you take so much pride in. It'd be like any of us to do a job and then just have to destroy what you did and the people never get in and to see it or be a part of it. And then to think, what happens to us, right? What happens if we start going to grocery stores? There's no meat here because they had to kill off, all of that food. Really, really incredible moments. I mean, it feels like, we're taking America and we're moving ourselves closer and closer to bread lines as though we live in the old Soviet Union. And again, as we keep looking from this show, why? Where is the justification for this? And then, and you look at YouTube. I mean, what's happening to our speech? I know you want to talk about that too.
Yeah, there's an article in The Atlantic, and, these articles are all over the place. We seem reported on it every week. This article is very symbolic of kind of the overview of everything that's happening with censorship. And in my opinion, it's a disgusting article. It's called Internet Speech Will Never Go Back to Normal. In the debate over freedom versus control of the global network, China was largely correct and the U.S. was wrong. If anybody wants to read this article, check it out. It basically says that significant monitoring of speech control is inevitable. Governments must direct censorship to conform to societal norms and values. In the article, too, on a side note, Zuckerberg calls data gathering and sharing a superpower. I asked for who. It's interesting because you covered YouTube censoring Dr. Erickson, censoring other people. Why is YouTube censoring in favor of the World Health Organization? This is an organization in America that President Trump no longer supports with his funds. He withdrew funding. So why are we under the dictates of the World Health Organization's information? I wrote an article for TheHighWire called Inconvenient Truths about the World Health Organization, and they have a long history of this. They pushed Purdue Pharma's opioid plan internationally after knowing that it was after all the lawsuits were happening in the U.S. They still took that. The World Health Organization administration endorsed that. HPV vaccine, they ignored those warnings. They ignored warnings like Dr. Peter Abe's of infant mortality increases in third world country vaccine campaigns. Why are we listening to World Health Organization, and why are companies like YouTube censoring in favor of them? This is all public knowledge, by the way. And why is it public knowledge? It's because we had an open debate about it, and the chips were on the table, and they fall where they may.
Right. Amazing. Well, I mean, it's incredible. I know, well, let's go on. What's happening in America? I mean, as we are starting to challenge this, we're under siege. We are seeing censorship taking place. A lot of us are talking about our civil rights, our constitutional rights. Does anyone care?
Yes, short answer. Attorney General William Barr seems to care. Last week we reported that he called stay-at-home orders disturbingly close to house arrest. This week he sent out a memo to 94 attorney generals, basically saying the Constitution isn't suspended. So in this article, Barr's memo is in fact a warning order to his 94 U.S. attorneys. It tells them to be, quote, on the lookout for state and local directives that could be violating the constitutional rights and civil liberties of individual citizens. The memo is called Balancing Public Safety with the Preservation of Civil Rights. So basically, Attorney General Barr has chosen 2 attorney generals to oversee the efforts to monitor state and local policies as all this reopening happens.
Do you think this is baloney? I mean, do you think this is just the government trying to look good, or do you really? I mean, I'm always wondering, can I even trust this? Does AG Barr, does he really care? Does he care about these things?
That's a great question. Let's look at the action. So the previous memo he put out was to warn of hoarding, and that they would take action with people hoarding masks and essential medical supplies. And there has been reports. If you look across the news over the past couple of weeks, you'll see the FBI taking action with that. You'll see police departments, local police departments taking action with that. New York was just a recent one with people hoarding masks. So there was action taken there. Now, this really brings some nuance, and I'm not saying the Constitution is a nuance, but someone's hoarding masks. There's the mask. You take them. You punish the person. But this seems, Attorney General Barr seems to be focusing on the discrimination around religion, speech, and interfering with national economy. So those 3 things. Now, that's a pretty big gray area, but I think if they have 2 people on a task force looking for this, he gives a heads up to the 94 other attorney generals. We could be onto something. And with public pressure, too, public pressure and reporting on this, even if it's just people posting stuff to the internet, that gets a lot of traction when people see that.
It's amazing, and it makes you think there's going to be a real divide in this nation. I mean, especially those that think that it's because he's a Republican or I'm a Democrat. I mean, I really wish we could get beyond our partisanship right now, because it's going to get ugly in many ways. We should be looking to science. We should all be agreed on our constitutional rights. Some crazy stuff happened in New York. What was the story you were reporting on in New York this week?
Yeah, the biggest thing is nursing homes, and I want to give a heads up and a hat tip to Michael Goodwin of the New York Post. They've been out front hammering these stories about the nursing homes and kind of just the ill treatment and the issues the nursing homes have had. And why have they had that? Well, New York knew for months that the virus was extra lethal in, of course, elderly and nursing home populations, as everyone's reporting. I mean, that's common knowledge. Governor Cuomo on May 25th sent out a directive to nursing homes, said that they can't deny patients to nursing homes that they suspect have COVID-19. So they had to take these patients. So the order effectively made COVID patients a protected class. For what purpose, I don't know. Nursing homes had to wait until the patient arrived to do their own tests. And we know, especially early on, if they even had tests, those tests took days because they had to bring out to the centralized CDC locations. They weren't on-the-spot tests.
So they literally just, I mean, this was an incredible story when we started seeing this come up this week. I mean, the one thing, if there was one data point we had in all of the confusion coming out of China, it appears to be affecting people 65 years and older. If there's one data point we had out of Italy as it moved to Italy, it's affecting people 65 and older. If there's one data point we had as it hit Washington the first time was a nursing home that got COVID inside of it was the first, a handful of deaths, right? Was it 8 deaths or something like that in one nursing home? We know that the nursing homes were the riskiest place, the people 65 and older. And to find out that Cuomo on May 25th says, I'm sorry, but you're not allowed to turn someone away in a nursing home that was just at the hospital and diagnosed with COVID-19, whether it's a new person coming in or someone that left. And what's the idea? What was the reasoning behind it? Do we have any idea? Well, I mean, I think about this. If there's one data point my 6-year-old daughter understands about COVID-19, it's that Grandma needs to be kept away from this thing. So what was Cuomo thinking? Was there a reason behind this?
None that I could see. And again, the New York Post has hammered him on this. He's been questioned about it too, and he really hasn't been forthright with any type of real explanation. Now, this is the same guy that talks about overabundance of caution with the policy, using data to reopen the economy to drive the policies. And this policy he puts out for the nursing homes, it seems to fly in the face of all of that. Now, the other part of the policy that's really crazy is it didn't allow the nursing homes to require testing. So if they have a patient that is being admitted or readmitted, they can't tell the hospitals, hey, can you go ahead and test that patient first before you bring them to our nursing home?
Maybe we put them in our own room or the other end of the wing or something like that. We can
exactly.
It really defies all reason.
And the last piece of that is the memo went out, and immediately the next day, the hospitals began offloading their patients because they wanted to clear out these emergency rooms. They wanted to get these people out of there, so they began offloading the patients to the nursing homes. So what that's doing, obviously, when you think about that, is you can't require tests. You can't tell the hospital
really quick. We got this right here. Hospitals are under pressure to discharge patients, including ones stricken with the coronavirus, but who don't need ventilators, to open up beds for what Governor Andrew Cuomo says will be a surge of thousands more cases in the next 2 or 4 weeks. However, nursing homes whose workforce is struggling with problems like those in hospitals, arranging childcare and managing a shortage of supplies like protective guard, fear the facilities will be overwhelmed. So they basically, in order to clear, let me get this straight, in order to clear beds for the onslaught of cases that were coming, you sent those sick people into the petri dish where you would create the epidemic that would then force your hospitals to be overrun.
100%
I mean,
correct.
I don't know. I don't want to be too judgmental. I'm not there.
The nursing homes were caught
flat-footed.
They were caught completely flat-footed by this memo because they didn't have policies in place to do anything with it. Literally 24 hours after the memo was initiated, they're getting patients. They're trying to shuffle staff around. It's a complete disaster. Shame on Governor Cuomo.
Incredible reporting, Jeffrey. Keep up the good work. And, of course, every week you're writing for the Jackson Report on TheHighWire.com. So for those of you that can read and want to take this information a little bit deeper, you definitely want to check out the great work that Jeffrey Jackson's been doing for us. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I can't stop there. I can't stop there with New York. I mean, because everyone keeps saying, well, we don't want to end up like New York. Gavin Newsom's still locked down in California because of what's happening in New York. And New York, we're finding out, made the most tragic, obvious mistakes you could possibly make. I mean, there is no reason why you shouldn't have had your nursing homes protected from people with COVID-19. I mean, that's the only thing I've said. If there's one thing you really want to do, should this ever happen again, can we get better at locking down and securing nursing homes? But I thought I meant, like putting some sort of like seal on there and having hospitals and nurses that can't go in and out and go home and come back as though that was a risk. And in New York, oh, no. It was even worse than that. Oh, you're sick? You got COVID-19? You're the best place for you to be? We're going to force nursing homes to take you on. Unbelievable, which makes me really ask the question, is New York a total failure? Is it a total disaster? One would really have to think so when you're looking at these headlines coming out. Why are so many people dying of COVID-19 in New York City? Coronavirus, New York registers record single-day death toll. Deaths in New York City are more than double the usual total. All right, these are terrible headlines. I'd hate to be the one responsible for them. What's going on in New York? So now we know the nursing homes were not protected. In fact, they were forced to take on patients. But there's other issues. Some of these we've covered over the last weeks. But I really want to lay out for you what looks like apparently, a total fail in New York. All right, let's begin with this headline. This is what we all were hearing about, right? New York has enough ventilators in stockpile for about 6 days, governor says. Now, remember, this was a whole issue, right? New York, Cuomo was screaming, I need more ventilators. I'm dragging ventilators from upstate New York. I'm getting all the ventilators I can possibly get, right? All right, well, this is something he may not have seen coming, but now this is the headline about ventilators. High mortality rate in intubated COVID-19 patients in New York City. This is MedPage Today. Nearly 9 in 10 COVID-19 patients who are put on a ventilator die, New York hospital data suggests. In the new study, researchers analyzed data from 5,700 patients who were hospitalized from March 1st to April 4th through Northwell Health, the largest health system in New York, with 12 hospitals across New York City, Long Island, and Westchester County. Of those patients, 2,634 were discharged or had died by the end of the study, and 320 patients with a recorded outcome were put on ventilators. Nearly 9 in 10 of those ventilated patients died. But if you look at the age difference, around 76% of ventilated patients between 18 and 65 died. And if you were over that age, 97% of ventilated patients over the age of 65 died. 90%. So essentially what we will look back in history, saying is it could have sounded something like this. Andrew Cuomo was saying, I need more guillotines. I need more guillotines to handle coronavirus. Because that's what they did. And thank God we had Dr. Kyle Seidel come forward and say, hold on a second with the ventilators. I mean, amazing that video stayed up long enough that the world could start shifting its treatment from ventilators. So mistake number 2. New York not only did not heed the advice of the entire world and put their nursing homes at risk, they used as a treatment not oxygen, but ventilators, which killed 9 out of 10 patients that were put on it. New analysis recommends less reliance on ventilators to treat coronavirus patients. Thank God we are learning our lesson. These are things we have to think about, right? What have we learned from this experience? Are we going to make the same mistakes? All right. Now, on top of everything else, you've done the wrong thing in nursing homes, using ventilators to kill people. And then what about the people that, maybe have had a life-threatening moment, but, we're going to bring them back to life, right? No, not in New York because of these headlines. New York issues do not resuscitate guideline for cardiac patients amid coronavirus. So first responders were outraged over the move. We talked about this last week. They're not giving people a second chance to live anymore. Or in Barzilay, head of the city union, whose members include uniformed EMTs and paramedics, fumed of state officials. Our job is to bring patients back to life. This guideline takes that away from us, he said. So even for people not dying of coronavirus, now you have an issue where you're dying of a heart attack, and where we would normally save you under those circumstances, Governor Andrew Cuomo and the people, in New York have said, do not resuscitate those people. Let dead dogs die, or however the term goes. I mean, it's really quite shocking, but it doesn't stop there, right? One of the problems we've been hearing about, even from Dr. Erickson, is we've cut our staff down. We are not staffing oncologists. We are not staffing heart, surgeons. Here it says cash-starved hospitals and doctors groups cut staff amid pandemic. I mean, some of this is because there's no money coming in. Cardiac calls in 9/11. This is what I want to get to. In New York City surge, and they may really be more COVID cases. Now, Here's the point. Dr. Erickson was making this point, right? He said, what are the outcomes when people are afraid to go into a hospital? And what are the outcomes if someone who has a heart issue is either afraid to come into the hospital, or number two, their heart surgeon, or who they would normally go to, their doctor, who might give them a stent because they're having some issues and they need to open up that artery, that's not happening. That doctor's been laid off. See, that was the idea. Let's just lay off everybody that's not ICU or ER. Or, let me not over-exaggerate it. They're filtering them through. It's like, 4 to 5 days on and then 10 to 14 days off to see if you got the coronavirus. So we're all so terrified of COVID-19 that we're telling EMTs don't resuscitate anybody. We don't want them coming in the hospital. Send all the doctors home because we don't want them getting sick. And now at home, you have people that are saying, well, I have a heart issue. My doctor's not in there. And maybe I'm afraid of COVID-19. How has this affected this? Well, now the New York Fire Department is speaking out. This is what we saw in that report this week. It says emergency medical services, the part of the fire department that runs the city's paramedic response, is responding to 3 or 4 times its average daily number of cardiac calls, with each call almost twice as likely to involve a death. The dramatic increase of cardiac arrest calls and deaths from cardiac arrest calls demonstrates the impact suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patients are having on 9/11 and what EMS members are having to respond to every day, said a senior fire official. Listen to this. This is incredible. From March 30th to April 5th of last year, 2019, there were an average of 69 calls a day for cardiac patients and 26 deaths, meaning 38% of those calls, they died. Now this year, March 30th to April 5th of 2020, the week ending on Sunday, cardiac calls averaged 284 a day, with 200 deaths a day. 72% of the calls ended in death. That's more than double. That's like, where do we go? 200 deaths as compared to 26? Look at that rise. The number for Sunday were the highest yet out of 322 cardiac calls. 241, or almost 75%, ended in death. This is what Captain Jing Kong, a 16-year EMS veteran, said via the official FDNY Instagram account. I know crews that go from cardiac arrest to cardiac arrest all day. I think that about sums it up. New York is a total fail when it comes to their actions and responses to COVID-19. I used to live there. I have family there right now. My mother-in-law is there, and I'm worried. I'm worried for her. There are better places to live because New York has done everything you could possibly do wrong. It would be really nice to see them start moving in the right direction, wouldn't it? And I certainly don't think we should make heroes out of any of the people that have made these kinds of mistakes. And then lastly, as though there wasn't enough to this, we had a drug that Donald Trump said the FDA, I want the FDA to make it available. It was hydroxychloroquine is what we know it to be, the malaria drug. And Cuomo, on top of everything else, while he's having these death surges, decides I'm going to limit your ability to get to hydroxychloroquine. We saw it in this Newsday. Cuomo limits prescriptions for 2 drugs to active virus cases. An executive order issued by Governor Andrew M. Cuomo this week limits prescriptions of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine to COVID-19 patients in state-approved clinical trials and for FDA-approved uses as an antimalarial or autoimmune treatment, and then only for a 14-day supply with no refills. Basically, yeah, it's a malaria drug, other things, but if you're dying right now of COVID-19, we're going to put you on a ventilator. 9 out of 10 of you will never come back to us, and God forbid, I decide to go with chloroquine, where trials by Didier Raoult has 1,000 people who have gotten it with a 99.3% success rate. Trials in China seeing the same thing. You've got doctors, all over screaming that hydrochloroquine is having an amazing success. Now, that's it. All across the board, for those of you that are watching, and you are probably up on the news just saying, Dal, geez, you shouldn't have touched the hydrochloroquine thing this week. You must have missed it, right? You must have missed it. It doesn't work. The FDA is now saying it doesn't work. I didn't miss it, folks. We're going to talk about that. I'm not afraid of discussing things. And look, it's all up for grabs, right? I'm here to present the information. And by the way, if you want to be able to read and find all the studies that we referred to, and you're brand new to this, all you have to do right now is type in ICAN in your comments if you're watching on Facebook, if you're on YouTube or on our website, TheHighWire.com or iTunes or anywhere else, just text us 33222 and type in ICAN. That's our nonprofit, ICAN, and we will send you links to this information, at least as much as we can fit in the bot. If you really want our newsletter at the end of every week so that you can go to your friends and show them all the link and look really smart and have read the thing yourself and have come to your own understanding, then you got to donate to the Informed Consent Action Network. Get it for everyone, whether it's 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents a month, or $1,000 a month because you're making up for those that are, maybe having a harder time. Please donate. Become a recurring donor. Recurring donors get our newsletter. We're asking for $20 for 2020. It's the end of the month. We're a little bit short. You can help us this month. We want to keep it going. We want to keep going strong. All right, let's get to it. Did I miss the coronavirus? The chloroquine headline? No. Here's what the FDA had to say in a thing that was put out this week. FDA cautions against use of hydrochloroquine or chloroquine for COVID-19 outside of the hospital setting or a clinical trial due to risk of heart rhythms. Heart rhythm problems. We've been hearing about this, right? Well, what about the heart rhythm problems? When I talk to my friends that are in liberal states, they all are really on top of this heart problem. Other people that tend to be watching Fox and things are saying, oh man, I have a friend that was saved by a hydrochloroquine. It was really great. So bizarre and such a clear divide. But what was fascinating is it was a divide from the very beginning. I want to go back to, I think it was about 5 weeks ago when we played you a video. How did this divide start? And how has it affected these discussions? This is what I want to talk about today. Take a look at 5 weeks ago. This was Trump and Fauci talking about hydrochloroquine.
The media seems to enjoy looking for the tension between you and the president.
A drug called chloroquine, and some people would add to it hydroxychloroquine.
Today, there are no proven safe and effective therapies for the coronavirus.
This has been prescribed for many years for people to combat malaria, which was a big problem, and it's very effective. It's a strong drug.
You've got to be careful when you say fairly effective. It was never done in a clinical trial. They compared it to anything.
It's not like a brand new drug that's been just created that may have an unbelievable monumental effect, like kill you.
We're trying to strike a balance between making something with a potential of an effect to the American people available at the same time that we do it under the auspices of a protocol that would give us information to determine if it's truly safe and truly effective.
It may work, may not work. I feel good about it.
The president feels optimistic about something, his feeling about it. What I'm saying is that it might be effective. I'm not saying that it isn't.
I'm not being overly optimistic or pessimistic. I sure as hell think we ought to give it a try.
The information that you're referring to specifically is anecdotal. It was not done in a controlled clinical trial.
Let's see if it works. It might and it might not.
There's no magic drug out there right now.
We're going to see what happens. We have nothing to lose.
You really can't make any definitive statement about it.
You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose?
So today we're talking about the divide in the nation, right? How we're all divided, and this is really where it began. If you haven't been aware of this, there were really two teams that then split off, right? You had conservatives that started reporting on all of the success of hydroxychloroquine all around the world. We started hearing from doctors on Fox all the time saying, "Oh my God, I've cured so many patients. This is amazing." On the other hand, you had those that seemed to be behind Fauci, saying Fauci said it doesn't really work. CNN, MSNBC, we can't trust this drug. We all got to wait for the vaccine's the only way out. The vaccine is the only way forward. 18 months from now, we've got to be locked down. And so this is where that divide really begins, isn't it? And it's quite odd that, and I've said it before, why didn't Fauci believe there could be a miracle drug? He believes there's a miracle unicorn vaccine out there, meaning something that doesn't exist on the planet. He doesn't want to seem to believe that something that exists now really works. And now they finally have their moment, right? The FDA's come out. And what did we see from all those same channels? If you've been watching liberal media, then you've been afraid of hydroxychloroquine, and now it's your victory dance. It looks like this.
A major setback in the hopes that the drug hydroxychloroquine could be used as a possible treatment for coronavirus. A clinical study indicates the drug touted by President Trump does not work.
The findings appear to be pretty significant and concerning. And so when you put this in conjunction where we found that those that were treated with the hydroxychloroquine had higher mortality rate and higher rates of going on ventilators.
Where is the evidence that they're using to determine that it's safe to continue? When we've got this study, we can see no other evidence coming out that it is beneficial.
So here's my question to you. When you watch that moment with Fauci and Trump, is there bias there?